With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. My name is Justin, and we begin this podcast with some developing news. As not one, but two iconic celebrity entertainers have passed away from us this week. Earlier this week, we learned about an icon, singer, songwriter, and media personality, the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, passed away after battling with Parkinson's disease, at which he was diagnosed in 2019. We just saw Ozzy Osbourne 17 days ago on July 5th in his last performance as he reunited with Black Sabbath one last time. Ozzy's had a great career, great-minded person, putting heavy metal music on the map. The true testament is that there's no one ever going to be like him. And therefore, he will for surely be missed. We also lost another great entertainer. The one that put professional wrestling on the map, in the immortal Hulk Hogan. Per reports, Hulk passed away from cardiac arrest. A Hall of Famer, wrestled throughout the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. Wrestled for WWE, WWF, WCW, and TNA. When you think of professional wrestling, Hulk Hogan immediately comes to mind. Having great feuds with Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. Having battles with The Undertaker and Yokozuna. Or maybe it was his greatness in ring ability as he had legendary matches with Andre the Giant or Roddy Piper. That transformation, that American hero, eat your vegetables and say your prayers mindset, and Hulkamania's running wild. Or whether it was in WCW where he turned against the world to become Hollywood Hulk Hogan. A man that whether you loved him or you hated him, you respect him for being the one who had to step up, take accountability, take a responsibility in putting professional wrestling on the map. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a lot of weight on somebody's shoulders. And so today, on this episode, we take a moment and we honor these two legendary men for all the sacrifices, for all the withdrawals, for all the political attributes that's been thrown at them. And we give our respects, our condolences to the families and friends who are grieving over Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan. I discovered the news, and I've been trying to find the perfect way to begin this show and the perfect way to show my respect. And to be honest, there's a million people out there, news stations, podcasters, sports broadcasters, the WWE, and more, who are going to be sharing memories and stories about these great men who redefined history, who left their mark behind for others to follow, to thrive off of, give new meaning, that it's okay to enjoy different type of music or to enjoy professional wrestling. A lot of people turned to the Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne during the days in the critical times when you felt like you had the world against you. And there's just no words that properly can portray the appreciation. You know, I've said on a podcast before, I am not a fan of Hulk Hogan for the reason of his character and how he portrayed himself. And it was a specific story that spoke to me that was talked about from the mouth of The Undertaker, aka Mark Calloway, who explains the story in 1991 at Survivor Series. Undertaker gets a WWF Championship match against Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan approaches Taker, expressing the concerns about receiving the tombstone. Taker promises, I'm going to take care of you. And when the spot hits, the Undertaker tombstones Hulk Hogan on top of a chair in the ring to win the match. And all you could hear is Hulk clutching himself in agony, in pain, as if this is the end. And it was days later when the Undertaker got a chance to re-see the footage of this tombstone that he realizes he never went near that chair. And when he confronted Hulk Hogan about it, his response said it all. I don't blame Hulk Hogan for what he's done. The goods and the bads. It's all business. Sometimes you have to take care of yourself in these situations, and you can't worry about the next person. Do what is best for you in this industry. You know, as many problems or issues that people have against Hulk Hogan, he's done his best to make amends, to come back, and to be that better person. No one's perfect in this life. People make mistakes. And don't, if you get a chance to ask Hulk or Ozzy today, they both will say they made plenty of mistakes. But it's because their intuition, it's because of their beliefs, it's because of their sacrifices that they had to give, is the reason why we are wrestling fans and music fans, why heavy metal is relevant today. And you know, I was earlier this week, I was thinking about Ozzy's passing, and then he had his concert a few weeks ago, and how kind of the tables just kind of all come together. And I almost thought it was a little bit ironic, and because I've seen this before. I remember when in 2014 the WWE inducted the Ultimate Warrior into the Hall of Fame. And he was kind of the face of the Hall of Fame that year. He makes an appearance on Monday Night Raw giving a speech, and literally the next day, the news comes out that he's passed. And I almost thought, I was like, a little suspicious in my mind. And it's just funny how life works that way. You know. And I'm glad that Ozzy has gotten the opportunity to have that final performance. You know, dealing with Parkinson's disease, where he's unable to walk, where his wife is taking care of him, the things that he had to endure in order to make this performance happen, where he cut off all medications, all the money goes back to foundations and research. None of the proceeds is taken credit for. And I just think the fact that, you know, if you had a wish to be able to accomplish that one last time, and then you pass, you know, you're okay, you're getting that clear to pass. I'm like, wow, something incredible. You know, I heard this news about Hulk Hogan passing, and I immediately went to a friend of mine who definitely grew up in that era of Hulk Hogan's time. And, you know, he's speechless. Not one or two, but two of his favorite entertainers of all time have passed on. And I've always thought to myself, you know, what am I going to feel when The Undertaker passes? What am I going to feel with when Garth Brooks passes, or George Strait, or Randy Travis, or Triple H, or, you know, Shawn Michaels, for that example? Because those are the people that I grew up on more so throughout my day than what my friend did back in the 80s and 90s. And I'm not trying, you know, this is a time to grieve for being a fan of all of this. But I personally, and this is just my belief, I'm at peace with them passing. They have left behind a legacy, a name. They have impacted their industry for the better. And look look at the outcome. It's thriving. Professional wrestling is thriving because of guys like Hulk Hogan. Heavy metal bands and artists and producers are thriving because of guys like Ozzy Osbourne. These are two men that are well retired within their rights in their industry. They don't have to come make appearances. They don't have to perform or produce another song. They are well retired. They have etched their signatures in society, left a legacy behind them, and they were out living their glory days, you know, reminiscing all the old, you know, times back when they were making things relevant. And so there's a part of me that is also at peace with these two men passing. It's unfortunate at the time or place, but I guess there's never a good time or place when it's time for you to get called up. You don't get to question anybody when someone comes knocking at your door and says, let's go. And why would you? I'm at peace with these two people passing on, not because I don't like somebody, not because I didn't grow up hanging on to every album or every championship reign that person had, because they have done it and they have left it for others to succeed. Yes, it's upsetting to think about the the children, the grandchildren that Ozzy has left. But I was thinking about this, and it's like he's dealing with Parkinson's. He can't walk. He's in constant pain, and if not, he's required heavy medications to stay out of pain. And it's almost like, why am I feeling sorry when I should feel joyful that his pain is gone, that his disease is gone, that his torture is over with, and he gets to live upon a life, eternal life, where he's pain free. He gets to join Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley and all the greats up there in the music world. Pain free. His trouble's gone. You know, you hear the news coming out this week. We don't, the flowers and great. I get that. I'm peace of mind because I know he's moved on to a better place, that he doesn't suffer anymore. Hulk Hogan's been dealing with health issues for quite some time. He's had numerous back surgeries. He looks like not a robot. He's been reconstructed till ends meet because of the amount of stuff that he's put on his body to entertain us. And I'm sure he gets to join up with the Andre the Giant. He gets to rejoin Roddy Piper, Dusty Rhodes, and all those legends up there. And he gets to live in a world with pain free. And so I was thinking to myself about that. And as much as I could sit here and cry and be remorseful, because I truly am. I love heels better than I love baby faces in wrestling. I love those who were told that they weren't going to make a name for themselves, and here they are. They left a legacy. But they're at the point where passing is inevitable. And I'm happy that they're able to move on pain-free. So I just want you to think about that as we do, remember their lives, remember the good things they have left us, remember the good times. Hell, remember the bad times, because those were times. And just remember one thing as we grieve. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't like Hulk was competing in the ring anymore. He wasn't on daily, weekly television. Maybe Ozzy had a few more songs he could have recorded, or a couple of different ideas that could have produced, but he majority has accomplished and established himself. I mean, I was taking notes the other day. Excuse me. I was taking notes the other day, and he was inducted, and he sold over 100 million albums. He rose to prominence in 1970, leading as a lead vocalist in the heavy metal band Black Sabbath. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006 with Black Sabbath, and in 2024 as an individual artist. He was also inducted into the UK Music Hall of Fame in 2005, both individually and with Black Sabbath. He was honored with Stars Hollywood Walk of Fame and Birmingham Walk of Fame. Received the Global Icon Award at the 2014 MTV Europe Music Festival. I mean, this is a well-accomplished man. Hulk Hogan, WWF championships, Hall of Fame. I mean, there's just nothing. Their accomplishments were great to be celebrated on. But they will truly be missed. And I do wish that they live in eternal peace. I do wish that, the best for their friends and family. And just remember that this is just a stepping stone. I'd remember and remind people that this is our training. This is our time. This is not our home. This is not our presence. And their times have been accomplished. So on today's podcast, I'm going to keep it short and simple. There's two subjects I wanted to get to. The first one being the segment on Monday Night Raw between Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, as Roman confronts Paul about backstabbing him back at WrestleMania. And then as we see football begin and training camps out there, Cincinnati fans, if you want to head out to a training camp, get out there and support your Bengals before kickoff in preseason. There's a little take I wanted to talk about preseason, and I strongly believe that I'm going to try to convince you to stay away from preseason football. So let's kick things off with the segment on Raw. I'm going to paint you the picture first, and then we'll talk about it. So Roman Reigns, so we begin the main event segment of Raw with Paul Heyman, Bron Breakker, and Bronson Reed in the ring. Paul is reminding the WWE Universe about Seth Rollins' condition and how he's going to be out for an extremely long time. We're also noticed that Bronson Reed is quiet. He is cuddling the Money in the Bank briefcase very tightly. Paul claims he has a lot to get off his chest about Roman, but then he was interrupted by Roman Reigns. Paul, let me just remind you, WrestleMania, it was Roman versus CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. Roman Reigns returns. He reunites with the wise man, but CM Punk has a favor entitled to him by Paul Heyman. And CM Punk wants Paul Heyman in his corner at WrestleMania, and there he got it. Roman Reigns gets upset about it. He's not happy about it. He feels like he's being betrayed. And Paul Heyman low blows CM Punk for Roman Reigns. But then Paul Heyman low blows Roman Reigns for Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. The turn of the century. Seth Rollins becomes a Paul Heyman guy. We see these three transactions occur at WrestleMania. Seth Rollins picks up the win. We don't see Roman Reigns as much. And now Roman Reigns is returning. SummerSlam is right around the corner. Paul Heyman pleads immediately to Roman, saying that, basically asking to reunite the tribal chief and the wise man, and to take Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed under his whelms to create this faction that will be unstoppable. Roman isn't buying any ounce of that. Roman, as a matter of fact, warns Bron Breakker that Paul will do the same to him as he's done to Roman. And that is, when you're washed up, when you're done, when there's no more left in you, Paul will backstab you. It turns into a brawl. Jey Uso comes out and saves Roman. And indications lead that towards SummerSlam we could see the team of Braun and Bronson take on Roman and Jey Uso. And would that be a terrible match? Absolutely not. I took two things away from this segment on Raw that I wanted to address. The first one was Bron Breakker. Let me remind you that Bronson's in the corner throughout this duration, in the far corner of the ring, holding that Money in the Bank briefcase close to him. Doesn't say a word, doesn't show expression, nothing. Bron Breakker, on the other hand, he's a dog, and you see he's pantsing back and forth. He's not liking what Roman Reigns is saying. As a matter of fact, he's starting to get fed up, and he inches closest to Roman. And Paul and even Bronson's had to take a moment to pull Bron Breakker away from Roman. Not right now, not the time or place. And I was just thinking to myself how this segment was not focused around the Money in the Bank briefcase, was not focused around Bronson Reed, was not even really focused around Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns and their little dispute. I took out of this segment that this was focused about Bron Breakker as he's working on being that next guy and that top guy in the WWE. And the fact that now you see Braun being held back, at some point that big dog is going to be released. And I would love, and it inched to me, I was like, how come we just can't see Roman and Braun at SummerSlam? Wouldn't that be such an incredible match alone? But I feel that, obviously WWE is trying to work with Bron Breakker, trying to build him up even more. And isn't that the reason why Braun joined this faction to begin with, to get those opportunities, to be built, to be that next big thing, possibly even turning on Seth Rollins. But, in the in-between status between the IC title and the heavyweight title, whatever title he's going after. He just needs that nudge. He needs a little bit of support. He needs to start affiliating himself with these top tier guys, with Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Gunther, etc. So that I was convinced that the purpose of this segment was to work and build a little bit more on Bron Breakker. But you notice they didn't do anything with Bronson Reed, because Bron Breakker is next in line. He's currently the closest wrestler in this group that is moving in a forward progress with their career, and you got to keep that momentum going. Now, hey, Bronson and Braun are two incredible people inside the ring, but to me, there's not enough said about Bronson that I'm convinced enough or sold enough to push him to the next levels. Braun's ready to go. As a matter of fact, I thought Braun was ready to go years ago when they decided to keep him in NXT. He developed. He went on to the main roster, and he even won the Intercontinental Championship, and has already had a successful run in the WWE, wouldn't you say? I do feel like he does lack promo skills, because it's kind of a wrench watching some of his promos. But I think that leads me to the next thing. Isn't that why he's also teamed up with a guy like Paul Heyman? It got me reflecting. This segment got me reflecting on Paul. And Roman says that Paul is going to backstab Braun when the time is right. But doesn't that define what Paul Heyman's career has been through and through? Paul Heyman has never been the one to just settle into a position and just take that until the end. He's always finding ways to reinvent himself and to keep himself relevant in the main stories of professional wrestling. This was a guy who didn't settle for a photographer position. He went out there and ran and and discovered ECW, put ECW on the map. He then didn't just settle for selling the company. He took the worst possibilities and ran as a general manager. When he was all done with that, he moved on to be Brock Lesnar's manager. Brock Lesnar was done with that. When he was done with Brock, he moved on to Roman Reigns, who was the next big thing. He was being filled as the next big thing. And now Roman Reigns left, abandoned. Let me not forget to remind you that Roman Reigns abandoned Paul, allowed him to be attacked by Solo Sikoa, played the victim. And so what does Paul do? He moves on. And he keeps himself relevant with talent that needs to be built. And one of the greatest attributes to Paul Heyman's resume is promo skills. When Brock Lesnar came to the WWE, he was a physical beast. All he needed to do was to show up, take care of his business, and leave. And if there's any conversations that you had to have with Brock Lesnar, you had them with Paul Heyman. It got me thinking, what happened if Paul was the manager of Goldberg in WCW? Similar story. But Brock wasn't good at promos. And I don't think we really heard much of Brock up until the later days. But Brock didn't need a promo guy. He didn't need to cut a promo because he had Paul Heyman. When Brock was reaching his end, and you just felt there was a new air, new scent in the air, that was when he moved from Brock to Roman. Roman Reigns was he saw his vision. Paul saw Roman's vision. And Roman wanted to get the family together, be this tribal chief. He was tired of being overlooked. He was ready to take his place among his family and among the WWE. Paul Heyman saw that vision, saw that opportunity, and grasped it as the wise man. Because guess what? Roman could not cut a promo also to save his life. John Cena even called him out live on it. So you pair him up with Paul Heyman, you make him a tribal chief. Paul Heyman comes in and week out and does what he does best, and he talks. He could change an atmosphere with the snap of his fingers. Roman Reigns lost that World Heavyweight Championship, gave it to Cody Rhodes, disappeared, abandoned Paul Heyman. And when Paul Heyman he didn't have no one else to go to. He didn't have another advocate. So he reunited with Roman when he returned. Yes, CM Punk was owed a favor. But think about this. Roman does not need Paul anymore. doesn't benefit him. Roman could cut promos now. CM Punk is really good on the mic. He doesn't need a Paul Heyman. So what else keeps Paul relevant in today's WWE? Where he hears and sees the revolution, the vision that Seth Rollins has by recruiting Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, two guys who probably just need some support. Bron Breakker's inches away of being, blowing up as a megastar. And you just think about Paul Heyman and trying to make that next decision, and just imagine for a moment Bron Breakker and Paul Heyman together. Braun shows up. He does work. He takes out anyone he needs to take out. He moves on to the next guy. Paul Heyman does all the speaking for him. They'll keep Paul around for another 3 to 5 years. And sure, when he thinks Braun is washed up, he has nothing else to offer, nothing to keep Paul relevant anymore. Either Paul will tuck his tails and retire, or he will go on to the next big thing. So can you blame Paul for what he's done, especially recently with Roman Reigns or CM Punk? Hey, I'm not saying that you have to like it. I'm not saying that you have to enjoy it or take, but you got to take it with a grain of salt, and you can't deny the mastermind thought process behind Paul Heyman to keep himself around the WWE. Why rejoin? Why team up with somebody who is on a part-time schedule that probably makes maybe 25 appearances a year? I'm not saying Roman Reigns isn't warranted. It's not like he's not a decent athlete. It's saying that Paul, has done everything he can do to give Roman the opportunity to stay on the map, because all Paul has done is provided a platform for Roman, for the bloodline, for CM Punk, for Brock Lesnar, and now for Bron Breakker and hopefully Bronson Reed to succeed. It will be up, and it was up to Brock to go out there and have these incredible matches. It was up to Roman to conquer Brock so many times, to beat The Undertaker, to beat John Cena, to beat Bryan Danielson and Edge. Roman did the work. Give him credit where credit's due. Paul created that platform for Roman to succeed. So just think about it for a second. I love Paul Heyman. And you could tell from the WWE universe, the majority of the fans love Paul Heyman. But this segment, I think, was iconic for me, and is something that I'm going to reference back and believe on, that this could be an opportunity to expand and provide that platform for Bron Breakker and potentially Bronson Reed. I just felt that the segment segment was addressed as advertised. It was not conceptive on my end as advertised. There was really not much that you can really say or do by either men to really give me that segment to get me to believe. And when I see Bron Breakker pantsing back and forth, running back and forth, being a little pushy towards Roman and having to be held back, I'm saying, okay, we're building off of something. And like I said, speculations from me, because I have not been able to confirm it, if Roman Reigns, Jey Uso teams up to face Braun and Bronson at SummerSlam. But I wouldn't mind that match. But a better match that I would recommend or prefer would be watching Braun and Roman, which would just do us such injustice if we don't see that happen. The other thing I was listening to throughout the week, though, that is, if this is going to happen, you have to build Roman, you have to build Bron Breakker. And in order to do that, you have to have him win, which means you're going to have him beat Roman Reigns. And I don't know, unless someone cheats, if you're going to get Roman Reigns, Bron Breakker, Bronson Reed to beat Roman Reigns and Jey Uso at SummerSlam. I don't know. Once I get that confirmation, we could have that conversation. All right, let's turn our attention into the NFL. The NFL is on the horizon. You got the Hall of Fame game next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, available on NBC. You'll get the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Detroit Lions. That will follow by 3 weeks of preseason football. You would have a break after that for a week as the NCAA college football season begins, before getting the first kickoff of the new season of the NFL football. And I could presume that majority of the listeners or the fans are football fans. Matter of fact, it seems like to me every year that I follow football, I watch football, and I get older, I become more of a football fan than anyone else. And I just want to watch more and more. And it doesn't matter what kind. I mean, I think the boundary line is staying within the NFL. For some reason, I can't watch the UFL. Don't ask me why. But what I've found myself realizing is how terrible the preseason can get. The local team here are the Cincinnati Bengals. And I support the Bengals. Now, my little story, which I get some controversy, which I just don't care about. I grew up in San Diego, default a Chargers fan by heart. I took it personal when they left to Los Angeles. And so I decided that I was going to become a Rams fan. And I felt like I was valid when my team left us in San Diego by choice, abandoning all of its fans south of Orange County. And I became a Rams fan. I moved out to Northern Kentucky, where the Cincinnati Bengals is really big into football. And so I become a Rams. By default, by nature, where I'm resigning at, I'm a Bengals fan. And I followed the Bengals a little bit with Andy Dalton and Chad Ochocinco and AJ Green. And the one thing that I could tell you that, as a Charger fan, former Charger fan, and as a Bengals fan, they are the reasons why we have gray hair. Why am I growing a bald spot on the top of my head? Is because of the Bengals and the anxiety they give us throughout the course of the season. I don't understand how a team who is expected or has the ability to make it to the postseason and potentially a Super Bowl can begin a season so terribly where you rely on them the rest of the remainder of the season as must-win games. And if you already look at the Bengals' schedule this year and how they begin at Paul Brown Stadium, how they take on the Cleveland Browns, you're kind of already in a panic because Cincinnati statistically do not perform well in Cleveland. But I realize that football has changed a lot. And even this, and we're starting to see statistics to prove it, not just by how they change and adapt to the season. See, 10 years ago, you talked to me, and I would argue, they would have 17 games, or they would have 16 games in 17 weeks. They would have 4 preseason games, and you would have 6 teams qualifying for the playoffs. Well, if statistics 10 years ago indicated if an NFL team began the season 2-0 or even 1-3, their chances of a postseason opportunity would become practically zero. Zero. Let's notate that. What we're seeing today with the extra game, so no one is finishing the year off with a 500 record. Because the only teams that were able to finish off with a 500 record back 10 years ago were the divisions that sucked, and the division winners were 7-9 or 8-8. And that was the only time you saw a 500 or less record team make a postseason. But I would argue that if you go into this today's seasons, and you see that extra game, you see that extra spot in the postseason, you would argue that an 0-2 and a 1-3 record to begin the season is still problematical to make the postseason. A lot better chance. But if you're a football fan, I would advise to you to stay away from preseason, or at least observe preseason from a far distance. And here's why. All right, we're 6 weeks before kickoff. And this is the same resemblance that we see today in Major League Baseball, that I just think each and every year it becomes more upfront and complicated, and people listen into it. I've heard, I was part of those conversations years ago, even in recent years, where I would talk to somebody, whether it was at work or on the, on social media, and I would, hear them out, and I would say, hey, someone will come up to me around this time, based off of a preseason game. Oh, I'm not worried about it. I'm not paying attention. I'm just going to tune it out. Good for you. But there's others out there that would argue, and say, we're going to win the Super Bowl. This is a perfect team. We're untouchable. But just think about the heartaches that come during a preseason, especially with the uncertainties. You have players battling for starting positions, which creates an excitement, don't get me wrong. But when you're uncertain about who's going to start at that position, so you can really lock in on that person, that player, it brings a concern. It feels like there are weaknesses in the team. Injuries. So many injuries unravel. The hydration. Let's be honest, some of these players do not keep in shape. They do not work out throughout the off season, especially at the level they're supposed to. So, you come in and you really got to get back into focus. We just learned about that with Will Levis a couple weeks ago. He's going to have to be out for the entire season because he's going to acquire shoulder surgery. It's going to leave a pathway for Cam Ward. There's no battle now. So if you're Tennessee, if I'm the Tennessee Titans, I'm concerned about Will Levis because he's our recent quarterback that, no, he may not be our next, Patrick Mahomes, but he's one of the guys. He's our recent guy that we're putting faith and trust into it. Hey, I don't know nothing about Cam Ward at the NFL level. So if I'm the Titans, I'm kind of a bit concerned, and you kind of also pray, because Will Levis could have been a quarterback who, worked a quarter of the year allowing Cam Ward to ease his way in and not just have to jump out at it. Contract negotiations. The one I absolutely hate the most is Shamar Stewart, right? Cincinnati Bengals. I'm like, we just talked about this earlier this week. He's dealing with some contract negotiation, not about the price, not about the money. He's worried about the guarantees, especially in situations that doesn't put him on the playing field. Not talking about injuries. We're talking about off-field drama that I'm sure the Bengals do not need. And then unsigned players. I mean, I remember a few years ago when we were wondering what the status of Lamar Jackson's contract with the Baltimore Ravens were gonna be. A lot of people blamed him. I was one to really point out that this contract negotiation went as far into the reason why he missed out. He cost his team the postseason. He didn't show up to Cincinnati in the playoffs to face the Bengals in the playoffs. Possibly because he claimed he was hurt. He wasn't feeling well. But I've seen players play through enormous injuries. But then I watched this happen, and I'm like, man, it has to be because of contracts. I mean, Trey Hendrickson may play more cautiously if he's threatening not to re-sign with the Bengals unless they give him what he wants. Now, I don't need Trey Hendrickson, who is one of our most reliable players on defense, to be a concerning factor on how he's going to play because of some sort of contract. Now, I'm sure a team's defense is, come opening day, we want to be 100%. We want to start off with a win. I'm sure every team goes out there and they say, we want to win our first home game and we want to win our first road game. That's all that matters. But in today's display of the NFL and how it's organized and presented, just because you don't win week one, or you don't win your first home game, or you don't win your first road game, doesn't mean you are necessarily out of the postseason just yet. This opens up opportunities where teams can finish off 7 and 10 now, and still make the postseason. 8-9, less than a 500 record is my point. Because that sense of urgency is now a marathon and not a sprint race. Yes, I prefer to have a team 100% from day one. But if but we have to kind of now strategize, because our bye week is either week 4 or week 5, or it could be week 10 or 12. The strategy is a bit different because you don't the implications of missing or losing those first 2 to 3 games of the season does not necessarily define your season anymore or the outcome. All it does is that it gives your fan base puts them in a position where when you put yourself in a position at week 10 because you didn't win a few games early on, and now you're faced with a win or go home scenario each week heading into the postseason, it creates that stress on the fan base. The strategy is a bit different beginning of the season. I'm convinced it is. It's about let's feel for things. Let's see what we need to work on and how we need to adapt. Well, hey, let me not forget to remind you that there's 3 preseason games. And guess what? The Chargers and the Lions are going to get an extra preseason game. Oh, yeah. You don't have to worry about starters playing as much as they used to. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little agitated, but I'm one of those believers where if you're planning to start on my team, I need you to play at least a full quarter, if not a half a game, throughout each preseason game. Not this whole I'm going to sit out because I feel like I'm too good. Listen, I'm sorry. Injuries is always going to happen. Nothing's going to prevent it. I feel like by having a guy like Joe Burrow sit out all 3 preseasons or 2 of the 3 games or whatever does not benefit him in prepping him for the Cleveland Browns in 6 weeks. I am a believer. I am convinced that you need to have some sort of game simulation live in preseason games. So I am the one who would argue that, listen, each and every preseason game this August, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, if Sal Stewart plays, if Trey Hendrickson plays, you need to have them playing for a minimum of a quarter. We don't train anymore to play 5 quarters of football. Especially if we're heading into Huntington Bank Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, where we statistically do not perform all that well, especially in recent years. You understand that stress with contracts, with, negotiations, unsigned players, position wars, injuries, opting out of having to practice because of safety reasons. You see all that stress, that anxiety that can bring before the season even starts, before we even see who fit, the 53 men on the team. Don't forget cuts. Let's not forget that. So if you're a football fan, I'm not saying don't enjoy preseason. I'm not saying don't get involved, don't support a few players, follow a couple of them. I'm sure we'll get a couple on our list that we're paying attention to. You know who I'm really paying attention to? Shedeur Sanders. He reminds me a lot of the Ball family, where family brought him into the game. Yes, he's talented in his own way. Don't get me wrong. But now he has this weight on his shoulders of how he has to perform. And guess what? The big stain in the Ball was that he had to perform. He didn't. Now he's kind of settled into the league, and he's nothing special. Not in my eyes. Anyways, Shedeur, I feel like is the same way. Had the spotlight on him in Colorado because of his father, mostly, just to be honest. I'm not saying that he didn't deserve some of it. Has some really big highlights, had a really good college career, but this is the NFL. It's a do or die. It's adapt or change. It's, this is not in NCAA football. You don't get away with things. You don't get to call your own shots. And that's my other thing, is that you haven't earned anything to call your own shots yet. Sal Stewart, you haven't earned anything to have any guarantees yet. You're not the Moses of the Bengals. You're not saving a ball club. You're not taking them to the promised land. Prove to me in the next 3 to 5 years, and let's work out a contract. But see, all these stories that lead into the preseason can get carried away. And we could always say, hey, Joe Burrow played game one of the preseason along with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We can hypothetically, in a hypothetical scenario, Burrow threw 17 times, rushed for 25 yards, threw 3 touchdowns, connecting with Jamar Chase for 4 passes for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. We could say Joe Burrow connected with T. Higgins 3 times, 35 yards, a touchdown. And that's all positive things. Trey Hendrickson has, maybe sacked the quarterback in one quarter twice. But see, it all takes one negative news coming out of the organization to make all of that great stuff I just said go away. All that could happen, but if Sal Stewart decides to go back to Texas A&M and doesn't sign with the Bengals, doesn't work out this contract deal, then that's going to be the highlight for the next 3 weeks. And it doesn't matter what anyone says. And look, and I get it, statistics does not mean nothing in preseason. But I don't feel like we get a realistic look at what this team is capable of, even with the players that they have to cut, if they're not playing. If we're dealing with these mishaps throughout the preseason. I believe that by time training camp comes, by time preseason baseball games take place, all that stuff in the office, negotiation, whatnot, you block it. No more negotiations. You want to talk to me after the Super Bowl. We will have all those conversations you want. But we've had February, March, April, May, June, and parts of July to work this out. That's 5.5 months, maybe 4 at best, that we couldn't sit here and have these conversations. And so it's just my belief. I want to take this time and just say thank you for those who are tuning in and giving this podcast another opportunity. Like I said, I will be talking more about a project that I'm working on currently here, hopefully by the end of the week, and I'll get that published. But I want to say thank you. I enjoy talking more about sports. As I get back into the daily regimen of sports news and conversations, there'll be more provided. I'm not planning on talking about everything under the sun, just some few topic points per episode. Hopefully to publish once or twice a week, depending how things go. But listen, if you have any suggestions, advice, collaborations, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm all open to considerations. Gaming channel, there's a lot of content that I'm working on that still publishes, that we're working on publishing as football and baseball, wrestling is fastly moving forward. So there is a lot of work on the back end, but trying to make at least an hour or two to come on here and talk to you guys is definitely enjoyable. I try to do it in more refined settings. I don't have anyone, behind me or have anyone have to hush in the background. No one's home. It's more convenient. I can kind of gather my notes for the day and just be able to talk to you guys one-on-one, sharing you my thoughts and information. SummerSlam's coming up. I'm planning on kind of doing a preview of SummerSlam if possible. I'm also hoping to talk more about baseball as the trade deadline's coming up next week. This is the final run, right? Teams are going to either be contending or they're not, and you got to make that fresh mark in that division or in that wild card race. So we will take a look at the standings, who sits where. Probably going to wait until after the trade deadline, but we'll do that. And then we will still cover news. I just say stay away from the controversy that lingers when it comes down to preseason, the news, the stats, the conversations that your local news is talking about, or ESPN. Listen to them. Never, always listen to them. I get that. Get your 411 scoop from them. I get, completely understand. But you got to find, just stay away, because I've seen people that take it too seriously, that get too involved, they get disappointed. I even myself is one who has challenged. Maybe this is just a personal conversation, and I made this point to talk to myself. I have no idea. So, but there is a distance that you come across. Um, Once again, I just want to send out my condolences, though, to the friends and families of Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan. I'm still kind of letting it all sink in on how I feel with them passing. True legends, to say. So I send out my condolences, and I hope everyone out there, takes care of themselves throughout this time. If you like this episode, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Appreciate your support. And I guess we'll be back later on. Until next episode, thank you guys for watching the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. You guys take care. Have a great rest of your day.